So over the years, there's been a bunch of different Spider-Man iterations in regards to the animated series. There's the original OG from the 90s, there's some of the CGI stuff from the early 2000s, and then there's one of my personal favorites, the Spider-Man Unlimited series. But as of recently, there's been a new series that's been released and had a lot of different controversy around it, Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. I'm gonna talk about how the show is potentially good, potentially the worst thing to ever exist according to a lot of people, and there's just that truth in the middle that I will probably give you guys. But if you guys want to hear what I have to say about the show, stick around and let's get into it.
You're now watching The Captain.
So this show in general is an interesting one because initially, from what I read, this was supposed to be a prequel to the MCU version of Spider-Man and Tom Holland and all that stuff that was going on there. But this seems to be different. It seems to be a Spider-Man series that's taking place in like a related but different, almost like dimension or reality as the main MCU. But this also is in the same universe in a sense. So it takes place around the time of Civil War, like the Sokovia Accords of the MCU, but it's in a different universe. So it's a little interesting in regards to how this show looks. It very much so is inspired by the MCU, with this version of Peter Parker looking very similar to Tom Holland, and even Aunt May looking similar to the Aunt May actor from the MCU series. But there's a lot of interesting changes, some changes that people are having a lot of issue with. And that leads me into the controversy around this series before I even get into the nitty-gritty. There was a lot of conversation about this show being overly woke and a lot of drama around characters being race and gender swapped, but I want to give you guys a little bit of insight on what I think about this. So initially, before watching the series, I thought this show was going to be a slave to the whole changing things and creating diversity for marketing purposes. I feel like there's been a lot of different series and shows and movies as of late where you're kind of just changing characters' ethnic backgrounds or genders historically just cause, and when doing so, it doesn't add a lot to that character. I feel like if you're going to change a character from being white to black or any other ethnicity, you really need to have that character be honed in regards to the experience of being that ethnicity. If you're making characters black for the sake of being black and have them interact as any other character, it seems a little disingenuous to me. Because if you didn't change these characters' ethnicities to be more representative of who's watching, it feels a little disingenuous not to have experiences that would be correlative to what people watching would experience. But the main talking point example around this show was the aspect of the Osborns being considered black in this, as well as Dr. Kirk Connors in this show being a woman and being a woman of color. The Osborns is a whole different thing. I feel like a lot of black people already had jokes about them being black for years because of the fact they have waves. And I think there's also historically like evidence of them in the comic books at one point in time being black in regards to how they were depicted. So I'm not going to get too much into them. The stuff with Kirk Connors, I was a little bit worried about because in my opinion, changing her race and gender needs to have some sort of added thing in there. But it's just me. Sometimes you can have characters changed and just to have them changed, but I don't know. I feel like sometimes this stuff in regards to the ethnic and racial and gender swapping of characters is more so a marketing tool than anything else. I've seen it a lot over the last couple of years in regards to characters being changed around, whether that be the Velma from the Velma show, even in comic books, stuff like having characters being changed has been a big talking point. And again, it serves as nothing but a big point of contention in order to get people to either hate watch or hate consume whatever that thing is, or to hate defend or consume whatever that thing is. It seems like I think studios are kind of figuring out, hey, if we piss some people off, there are gonna be people on one side of the spectrum that hate this thing and will hate watch it so they can talk shit about it, or there'll be people on the other side of the spectrum who will watch it and praise it no matter how good or bad it is. And I think there's just a lot of gray in that middle area where we can talk about the Spider-Man shows. Last but not least, in regards to the controversy, before I get into this stuff, I want to talk about the big quote that was going around in regards to the main actor himself that's playing Spider-Man, pretty much saying that he was afraid of the series being woke. Now, first off, people that are complaining about that, please go read the entire quote and the entire interview in which he was discussing this. Because right after he said that line, he went on to talk about how great he thinks the show is and how the show isn't overly woke. Now, there's a lot of conversation to be had around the term woke and its correct usage in this, because I think a lot of people are misusing the term at this point and kind of just using it as a correlation for DEI, which is incorrect. But I do think there's not an issue with him being skeptical about this show initially before getting the script and actually acting out the series. It's okay to critique things that you're working on. So I'm not going to give too much hate his way in regards to that. I think he just had a bad choice of words. All in all, again, I think I've talked about enough of the controversy. You guys can feel about the controversy how you feel. I just kind of wanted to get that preliminary stuff out the way so that people that are watching this are not familiar with why people be mad or just hate spamming this thing. Now you understand why people may feel the way they feel about it, no matter what side of the spectrum they are on. Now, getting into the actual show itself and what makes this thing good or bad. I will say that right now, 5 episodes into the series, I feel like this show is a solid 6 right now, possibly a 7, but I'll probably sit kind of stir and pack on this being like a 6 out of 10, like 6 spiders out of 10 spiders. The show is interesting. Like I said before, it has a lot of interesting things in regards to where it takes place and the characters involved and the scope of this world, because the scope is very big. There's a lot of different aspects that are going to be played around with the show in the future, potentially, that I will get into and why I think it has a lot of potential here. But all in all, I think some of the writing for it is kind of off. There are characters that are getting really good plot lines and storylines drawn out, and they're changing for the betterment of the story. But the main character, Spider-Man, I feel like it's having this weird thing to where he's kind of having like the episodic nature of, hey, one adventure to one adventure, and he's potentially growing a little bit. But I feel like a lot of the more in-depth character development and like storyline is being created for one of the side characters, which is not a bad thing. I think the side characters deserve development, but I feel like most and the bulk of development should go towards the main character who everybody is here to see. But again, I can understand why people would feel the way they feel about it in regards to maybe not having it that way. But at least personally, in the way the thing is written, you should have that level of care in the storyline of characters changing for both characters, personally. And for people that are curious what it is, this is the part where I'm going to get into spoilers. So for people that have not watched the show, please pause the video, go watch the 5 episodes if you're interested. If not, stick around and I'm going to spoil a little bit of why I have this thing at a 6 right now, and potentially why I think it can be the best Spider-Man series that has ever come out. But without further ado, get into the spoilers. So this show essentially has potential, in my opinion, to be the best Spider-Man series to ever exist. And I say that for the factor of the amount of different potential storylines that are being created by just having certain characters in. Now, this is kind of tangentially related to the diversity and all the drama around it. A lot of it was around people having characters race swapped for the sake of being race swapped and all that good stuff. Usually, in regards to that, my big proponent on why I feel like characters want to be added in for sake of diversity, either create your own original characters that represent that diverseness that you're looking for, or utilize characters that already exist. And the people that created this show are definitely fans of comic books and of the MCU proper, because they brought in a lot of different characters that promote diversity that are already around and characters that don't really get a lot of shine, in my opinion. And in inviting these characters in, there's a lot of potential for different storylines and aspects of the Marvel universe that you can put within this Spider-Man series. Who are these characters? I'm glad you asked. Getting into it, first and foremost, one of my favorite characters in Marvel Comics that I feel like does not get enough recognition is that of Nico. Nico in this show, I honestly cannot remember for the sake of me what her like hero name is in the comic books, because she's usually referred to by Nico in whatever I see her in. If you're familiar with the Runaways series, she is a character in that, as well as a very prominent character in the Midnight Suns video game that came out not too long ago. She is dope. She's essentially this blood witch that has this magical staff that can pretty much do whatever she wants. And she's a member of the Runaways primarily, and that's her whole main story and how things were operated around her upbringing and origin story. But she's a very dope character. She's Japanese and has a lot of different things that you can bring to the world in regards to the magic aspect of things. So maybe when we get Doctor Strange making another appearance in this at some point, I would love to see Nico have a bit more of an impact on the story. Because right now, you have no inclination of her having any of her magical abilities or even having a staff, which is like a family heirloom that's passed down within her family, within the women. And I think maybe potentially she has it, because in the series you see her have this pendant that is very reminiscent to her color scheme in the comics and very reminiscent to the actual artifact itself. So maybe that is potentially what's going on there. I'm not sure, but it's something that I think can be dope. And having her in the show is a great open and gateway to the magic stuff in the world, and also potential storyline you can do, because she is in the story Spider-Man's essentially best friend for the most part, and she's with him every day, and like his first friend he makes in this first day of high school. So again, you have a lot of avenues you can go down in regards to her. But in addition to her, there are characters by the name of Wave, who is the first Filipino character in my knowledge in Marvel Comics, and it's the first significant one. She plays Spider-Man's initial crush, but she's also the love interest for another side character in this by the name of Lonnie Lincoln, Lincoln, who, if you guys have played any of the Spider-Man video games or watched any of the Spider-Man series in the 90s up until now, you'll be aware that Lonnie Lincoln is a character by the name of Tombstone, who has always been a historical significant Spider-Man villain who has like skin made of concrete. He's been pretty much a mafia boss essentially in New York City, and has been a big thorn in the side of Spider-Man. Now, this show is doing a very interesting thing with him in regards to what I mentioned earlier in regards to, I'm saying regards a lot, but in regards to what I mentioned earlier in regards to Lonnie's, in regards to, I keep saying regards, Jesus Christ. There's a character, obviously, that I was talking about earlier that was getting a lot of development, that was taking away a lot of the spotlight from Spider-Man, I think, in regards to a character arc. And this is Lonnie. Lonnie is done very well in this series because he's not a villain from the start. And I was wondering how they're going to get down this path and kind of how this series is going to play out in regards to tone. Because so far, the tone of the show has been very lighthearted and kind of funny and quirky in regards to like maybe aimed at preteens to children. But I was hoping that this show would be very similar in tones like the 90s series or even the Spider-Man Unlimited series, to where you can have the fun child-like stuff, but incorporate a little bit of that older adult world building and story arcs, to where you can get a little darker. You don't have to get gruesome with it, but you can do a little darker things and some storylines that adults can also enjoy with the series, watching it with their kids. And I think that's always the best version of an animated series, when you can make a show that is not only something that children can enjoy because it's colorful, it's bright, it's animated, but something that adults can also sit down and consume and not feel like they're just watching Pokemon with their kids. That's the mark of a true great animated series, in my opinion. So with this show, they're doing something very interesting with Lonnie Lincoln in regards to his development from hero, star quarterback of a football team who's just kind to everybody into a potential mafia boss and villain. In the series up until this point, you see Lonnie as a guy that can do no wrong, and he's a superstar football player, potentially going into the NFL and all that good stuff. But behind the curtains, he obviously is a kid that is very broke and lives in the ghetto. He is playing a character who is essentially trying to make his way out. Story we've seen 1,000 times before, but it's told in a way that I don't think is very pushy. Because initially, when I heard all the drama around this series and how woke it was going to be and all that good stuff, I was scared that they were going to really shove the idea of him being a kid from the ghetto down our throats and not be very genuine with how it's depicted, and making his mom a crackhead, making his dad somebody that's not around, putting him in a trap house. But when you're shown that he lives in not so good part of town, that's just probably a black area of town, we're shown that his family is a normal family. Like, his dad works hard, his mom is very caring, like he has a great supportive system, but he just lives in a bad area because of their finances, which is very much so representative of most of the world and most people in general. So I feel like that was done very well, and his whole story arc essentially is based around him getting trapped up in this gang war that's going on because his little brother wanted to be gang affiliated for whatever reason, to be cool and whatnot. So now he's trapped up in this thing, and he's slowly becoming the character Tombstone and kind of starting to enjoy being involved in all this gang activity that he's kind of going through, which is understandable to an extent. I still feel like there's a little bit of like, there needs to be something to incentivize him to stay in this, because Lonnie's whole motivation, it seemed like, was to get his family out of the hood. And you would think that with his potential to go to the NFL, that he would be locked in on that. And I thought that initially his motivator to stay within gang stuff would be money motivated, to get his family right. But so far, it seems like he's starting just to enjoy the camaraderie and like the team aspect of it, kind of replacing football with gang activity. But again, he's getting a lot of development, a lot of care in this series. And Spider-Man, I feel like, is getting care, but not in the way that I would like. So maybe you guys love it, but for me personally, I would like to see a little bit more struggle and strife in Spider-Man's life. It seems like Lonnie is getting all the serious, like adult-like development and things that people can kind of understand and relate to. And Spider-Man is dealing with like the typical teen drama issues in regards to not realizing that his best friend, who's a girl, likes him and has a crush on him, or having time constraints with certain things, or just not understanding that he is in high school. He's dealing with a lot of like typical high school drama. And I feel like there should be more strife. Like in my Spider-Man that I read, and my best version of Spider-Man, he is catching hell. In Spider-Man comics, Spider-Man goes through some of the like honestly, more than any hero I can think of, he goes through the most bullshit. Spider-Man is always, people always dying on him. He never catches a break, bro. Spider-Man never catches a break. And I feel like this Spider-Man that we're seeing so far has just been enjoying life a little bit too much. So far, the biggest strife and struggle he's had is finding out the right suit that he should be wearing and time restraints when it comes to Nico. And that's about it thus far. So I'm excited to see what more that has to offer. But another big thing that has potential to really be a difference in regards to how Spider-Man is perceived up to this point is the fact that his team Spider-Man, kind of similar to like it's the Flash universe in regards to Team Flash, his unit is based around the Osborn. For whatever reason, he changes inside like a dumbass and gets caught on camera by Norman Osborn, who is very inspired and wants to assist Spider-Man from a technological standpoint and giving him resources because he saved Harry and he believes in the city. So he pretty much forms a Spider-Man team around Spider-Man where him and Harry are two individuals that are really monitoring him from the chair and kind of surveilling him and giving him advice while he's out in the field. Very similar to like the Batman Beyond stuff, how Bruce Wayne was giving Terry McGinnis advice while he was in the field. So it's something that's not foreign. It's not a foreign concept, but it's different because usually, again, Norman Osborn is painted as this big villain who has control issues. But so far, this version of Norman Osborn has seemed to be very genuine and very, what I'm looking for, altruistic, I guess is the word, in regards to how he's approaching the situation. And Harry, just being Harry, cool dude, not having any issues as either. But this series so far has been very generous to Spider-Man, and I feel like a good Spider-Man series should have a little bit of struggle for my boy. But again, that's just me and what my experience and my versions of Spider-Man are that I believe need to be or my version of Spider-Man that I think are good historically. But again, this series could be great in doing something different. But in regards to more of the potential, because I know I kind of got off track in regards to discussing all the characters. Additionally, there are two more characters that I really want to put a light on that could be very dope. One for me is a character by the name of Amadeus Cho. If you guys aren't aware of who Amadeus Cho is, y'all need to do some research because this man is dope. And he's a Hulk. Y'all already know I'm a big Hulk fan, so any of the Hulks I'm always ride or die with. This Hulk in particular is a Korean individual who is one of the more smart people within Marvel Comics in general. He is an insane level genius, and he becomes the Hulk in the Awesome Hulk series, if I remember right. Like I can't remember the exact name of the comic line was, but I believe it is the Awesome Hulk. Amadeus Cho, though, has a potential to just be a dope character in regards to connecting him to the Hulk and all the other things and all the other villains that Hulk himself has. And also has a lot of potential to kind of maybe drop a breadcrumb into how the Hulk can develop in the MCU, because that is another confusing thing. Like I mentioned before, this takes place in a variant version of the MCU, but it's not the MCU. So these characters exist here, but I don't know if they exist in the actual MCU. So it'd be dope to get an Amadeus Cho there, because we've already kind of gotten the main Hulk proper, and we have his son Scar now. So I don't know if we're gonna get like a Team Hulk at some point down the line, or hopefully a World War Hulk in their version of things, how that goes. So again, I'm excited to see how that goes. But besides Amadeus Cho, there's also another character that she's escaped the name of me, but she is a student intern from Wakanda. Wakanda existing in this world and very much so being a place that is known is also very interesting, because you're having these characters here that could lead to more events and interactions with characters like the Black Panther down the line. This show, to wrap it all up in a nutshell in regards to the potential, this show has potential to be a lot of what people thought and hoped it would be initially, which was the Spider-Man 97 stuff, because we're coming off the tails of a very successful release of X-Men 97, where they did what I mentioned very early on in the video. It was something that, just like in the 90s, had a very bright, colorful thing that kids could enjoy, but really complex and darker and really gritty storylines that kept adults engaged, that also hold up till today. So I'm really hoping that we're not doing all the kiddie stuff and all that stuff. And I don't know, this is giving me breadcrumbs. So far in the 5 episodes, they're giving me breadcrumbs of different villains that are very serious and they're very, they seem to be grimy, but there's still just a lot of jokes being thrown around by characters that you wouldn't expect jokes from. They debuted Otto Octavius in this series, and I assumed he'd be very cunning and very menacing. And so far, he's like been that, but in other instances, has cracked a lot of jokes. A big thing for me in regards to series, especially when you're building up a villain has to be menacing, even outside of a series and any narrative in general. If you're building up this big villain, and like they did for 4 episodes with this series, where you kept finding all these superpowered individuals who were buying tech from Otto Octavius and and then becoming very strong and giving Spider-Man a run for his money, they made it very ominous and made him seem very like not evil per se, but very menacing and mysterious. So when we finally meet Otto Octavius, he's cracking jokes and being really quippy, and I'm just like, I don't know. He should have been more stoic and more menacing, in my personal opinion. And seeing stuff like that reminds me, oh, this is a kid show. So it kind of takes me out of it. It's very tonally, the show's very tonally divergent in regards to having all these jokes, but also having some serious stuff covered, like gang violence and different things like that in regards to some of the characters as well, but it's being very dark. And they're not blending and meshing perfectly to me. It feels like two shows running like in the same world side by side, and they haven't meshed yet. So I'm interested to see how this stuff meshes. And really incredibly so, I'm really excited to see how the Spider-Man interactions happen with Tombstone as things goes on. Eventually, Spider-Man's going to have to run into Lonnie Lincoln and stop him and arrest him and get him probably thrown into jail and really just killing all his hopes of ever being in the NFL and all that good stuff, and him now being a statistic, sadly. But I don't know. This could be a Venom situation where Spider-Man ruined Eddie Brock's life, so then Eddie Brock wished death on Spider-Man and became a villain in Venom and all that good stuff. But I don't know. I'm interested to see what this does, and I really want to see how this show progresses down the line, because again, like I said before, with all the different aspects that this world has opened up to in regards to different places and aspects of Marvel Comics, from magic to science to the Wakandans and different things like that. It has a lot of potential, and it could probably run for a very long time if they do this right. But they need to tighten up a lot of the aspects and get the tones together, in my personal opinion. I'm hoping this first season is really just a setup season, and it's not like supposed to be indicative of what the rest of the series is supposed to look like. But again, it could be it. It could just be them fumbling the back again, with sadly having one of the better setups and worlds built out that I've ever seen in a Spider-Man series outside of the original 90s series. So again, you guys let me know what you guys think about the show in the comment section below. And did you agree with me? Did you disagree with me? What are some of your favorite characters, and what are some of the characters you hate? Or what side on the spectrum do you stand in regards to this being a big DEI mess, or it just being a dope show altogether? Where do you stand? Are you in the middle with me, or are you on one side of the spectrum that people have been on the internet? All in all, if you guys are enjoying this video and enjoyed what I had to say and want to see more of what I have to offer, please check out some of the other videos I have on the channel where I've talked about comics or any of the other MCU stuff if that's your thing, or some of the DC stuff if that's also your thing. You'll find a lot of that here on the channel. And please, 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 please like the video so that more people can find a lot of my content. And it's something you guys can do for free just to help your boy out, so that I continue to grow this channel and things go down in history going forward. But again, this has been Captain Diesel of Captain Diesel's Dojo. Please be good people and, form your own opinion. I'm only a human being, so what I say does not always go. I'm just here to kind of give you guys a perspective. But again, see you guys later. Peace.